Good evening, Carlene. Hello, hello.
Hello, Stuart. How are you?
Good, I'm doing fine, and welcome everyone to the final installment of the Religare music series. I'm bittersweet tonight that the series is wrapping up. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Stuart Nelson, the Vice President at the Institute for Spirituality and Health, where our mission is to enhance awareness of the relationship between spirituality and health. Our ASL interpreter this evening is Alan Farnham from Nightingale Interpretive Services. Welcome, Alan. I'm glad you're here again. And I'm joined also by Carlene Graham, Director of HGO Co., Houston Grand Opera's Community and Learning Initiative.
Hello. I'm delighted to be here for our the fifth of the 5-part series.
If you're joining us for the first time, Religare Music is part of a wider series that explores some of the essential building blocks of cultural and religious traditions. Religare, or to bind fast, or to bind again in Latin, is considered by some scholars to be the root word for religion. So Religare Music delves into the rich musical traditions that have inspired and communicated the most profound aspects of human experience across millennia.
And HGO Co. has been partnering with ISH for programming as part of HGO's Seeking the Human Spirit initiative, which began, I believe, in 2017. So it's been, we're in year 4 now. This is a 6-year multidisciplinary initiative designed to highlight the universal spiritual themes raised in opera and to expand and deepen Houstonians' connections to opera and art. Now, through the components of music, rhythm, melody, harmony, lyrics, and tonight, silence, you may see connections between cultures and spiritual practices where none were present for you before.
And we chose silence to close it out because we feel like through the whole series, we've kind of been dancing around silence, kind of flirting with silence a little bit. It's this space between the notes. It's that space where music erupts and emerges from. And it's also a really important component of so many religious and spiritual traditions, sort of some of the canvas upon which our emotions, our experiences, our consciousness is laid onto and into. And so we feel like it's a great way to wrap up the series. So Carlene, I'll see you a little later in the program.
Excellent.
Our first guest this evening is Samani Punya Pragya Ji of the Jain Vishwa Bharati, who will lead us in a silence meditation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Will you tell us a little bit about what we'll experience today?
Information about Jain tradition of meditation.
You can maybe a little bit about the Jain tradition, and then you can tell us about meditation, please.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to briefly introduce a meditation practice called Preksha meditation in Jain tradition. To do that, I will be using a prayer called Spirit of Joy, Ananda Bhavana, as an example for today's brief meditation practice. Jainism puts a lot of emphasis on the ideal state of mind necessary to experience the true joy that comes from spirituality, and hence the selection of this prayer. Spirituality is about connecting with one's inner self. When we do so successfully, we can truly experience the qualities of our soul. Simply stated, those qualities are peace, bliss, and tranquility, amongst many others. This prayer recites the experience of a practitioner as he or she present into that realm of the spirit by calming the body, mind, and passions. To get ready for experience, let me ask you to select a comfortable posture, either sitting on the floor as I am, or a chair with both feet touching the ground. Relax all the parts of your body, including the face. Take deep breaths, making sure that your belly button comes out when you breathe in and goes in when you breathe out. Focus on your breath and make it rhythmic. We are doing this to disconnect our mind from physical world around us. When the music starts, please immerse yourself in it. The verses are recited in Sanskrit, but their English translation is on the screen. Please start the music.
Bliss is flowing in my inner self. No me dukkam, no me dukkam. I have no suffering at all. Shantam chittam labdham labdham. My mind is full of serenity. No me tapaha, no me tapaha. I have no regrets at all. Shakti Shrotaha Pradurbhutam. My inner power is manifesting itself. No me dainyam, no me dainyam. My distress is over. Antaschakshuhu labdham labdham. My inner vision is awakened. No me ratrihi, no me ratrihi. There is no darkness within me. No me dukkam, no me tapaha. I have neither suffering nor regrets. No me dainyam, no me ratrihi. I have neither suffering nor darkness. Shantah krodhah, shantam manam. My anger is waning away. My ego is dispelled. Shanta maya, shanto lobha. My deceit is fading. My greed is subsiding. Shantam papam udita shantihi. My sins are reducing. Peace is manifesting. Udita rijuta, udita mriduta. Simplicity and humility are awakened in me. Udita tushtihi, udito dharmaha. Contentment is reinforced and spirituality is awakened. No me dukkham, no me tapaha. I have neither suffering nor regrets. No me dainyam, no me ratrihi. My sufferings have vanished. The darkness is over. Udito dharmaha, muditam chittam. Spirituality has been awakened. The mind is blissful. Muditam chittam, muditam chittam, muditam chittam. The mind is full of bliss. The mind is full of bliss.
Hope you enjoyed it. To know more and to have a deeper experience, please visit our website jvbhouston.org or call us at 281-596-9642. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A beautiful experience, Carlene.
Yeah, and again, I found, as in all meditative practices, our minds tend to wander probably. And, coming in and out of what I found myself here was focusing on the very clean melodic line of the chant, and then focusing sometimes though on the music, on the text when it was translated. And so it was really a beautiful experience. What about you?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. I found myself, the voice the singer was so pure, and like you said, that clean quality to it. And then I also shared that experience of kind of like coming out and in, and my awareness focusing in different places. So it was a wonderful experience. And I'm looking forward to learning more about the Jain tradition actually after that.
Absolutely.
So I'll leave you now, but I'll see you later.
All right. And our next guest of the evening is performer and new music specialist, Megan Ihnen. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, Carleen. It's so nice to be here. Thank you.
It's lovely to see you again, and just really, we're thrilled that you're here. And you know, this will take us in a slightly different direction before we get back to sort of the silence portion of John Cage. But it was in terms of contemporary classical music and modern influences. Cage certainly is a revolutionary, though he died almost 30 years ago. He is still, the music is still, has influenced so many living composers. And so I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about the music, the idea of choosing to really spend most of your time making music in this modern contemporary world, because oftentimes in classical music, we're not trained that way.
Sure.
And so if you could just talk to that for a minute.
Of course. Well, I came up also in the classical tradition and was studying opera along the way, and I kept bumping into new scores being written right now, or when I was in school, and realizing that the subject matter and the sounds and all of it just really spoke to me. It just was the place and the sound world I wanted to make music in. And so just got caught up in all of that. And John Cage is a great example of that freedom and the permission slip that I found in contemporary classical music or new music, because that in new music, I'm encouraged and I get to exploit all of the vocal timbres that I have access to, which is one of the things that I know that both you and I really love about that, is just getting to explore, all of those different sounds. And so my voice loves a bel canto melody, and then my voice also loves to create all sorts of different sounds from that. So that's what really drew me to this. And I think we're going to listen to a little bit of John Cage aria. It's a piece that I've performed quite a bit. And that's one of the things that I wanted to point out in that piece in particular, is just the range of vocal timbres that he asks you to play with. And in the score, what some people may or may not know if you've encountered his music before, is that John Cage created scores in lots of different systems, and this one is what we call a graphic score, graphic notation. So in Cage aria, there are lines, just drawn lines, that show me the kind of range that I'm going to be in, either high or low, and then each line has a color to go with it. And he encourages the vocalist at the beginning in the program notes to say, to perform it. You get to pick your own vocal sounds, but each color is going to represent a different vocal sound. So when I perform this piece, I've performed it many, many times, and sometimes they'll change a little bit, but I kind of have my go-tos that I really like to do for each one. And so you'll hear like a very nasal sound, or you'll hear maybe like sometimes I do this with like a vocal fry, which in some vocal circles is like, not allowed. But in this case, it's an effect that we're using because it's so intense that way. And so, and then you'll get my kind of classical sound, and you'll get a jazz kind of inflection. And so you see with that, where I'm going is getting to play in the sandbox of all these different vocal sounds.
Well, we'll take a look at this, and when we come back, I want to specifically talk about how performing this type of work, how it links to spirituality. So let's take a look at John Cage's aria. Bravo.
Thank you.
You know, it's you know, and again, too, it may seem very random or by chance, but isn't this what his music is all about? This idea of indeterminacy. I always never pronounce the word right. Indeterminacy.
Yeah, there you go.
Of his work, and how much trust he puts in the hands of the performer. You know, because if I were to perform that or another singer, you'd get a very different performance.
Very different. Exactly. And I think that's what's so special about this is one of the stories that I love to tell about Cage's aria, and what I hope will kind of play into what we're thinking about for when we talk about this next piece, is that Cage wrote aria because he happened to be visiting a composer and his wife was the famous soprano Kathy Berberian, and was in her kitchen, and she was just puttering around, and Kathy Berberian speaks like 7 languages, you know, and so she would just be going about making coffee or cleaning a dish, and she would be speaking to the, you know, a pet or something like that, and so you'll hear those little inflections. He wrote that kind of with that in mind. What I love so much about that story is that John Cage really asks us to think about what makes sounds music, And I think that that's what's so special in especially what we're talking about today and with what we're about to experience together, which is, yes, there's chance, yes, there might be silence, but how much silence does one really have in any moment of your life? And letting the sounds that you hear, or the sounds that are internal or external, let your attention make them music, rather than letting them fly past you and your inattention makes them noise, makes them just sound that happens. And that's, at least personally, one of the things that I try to keep as my totem from John Cage, which is, Megan, remember that your attention is what makes it music. And so that's hopefully something that I'm hoping that our viewers and our participants will join us in today as we're experiencing this together.
Well, I'm going to go off screen, and we're going to do a slightly miniaturized version of John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
Exactly.
And I feel like this is the litmus test for maturity. It's one of these times, because seriously, when you hear this as an undergraduate in,
Right.
there's always someone, it's usually like a trombone player, who always programs this on their recitals, right? And then everyone ends up giggling and getting totally uncomfortable,
Exactly.
and really missing the point.
Yeah.
And so let's watch this. Let's have this experience,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back and chat just a bit about it.
Sure. And as I get started with this, I'm just going to say a couple more things about John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Is quite a well-known piece because it seems to be controversial, but he wrote this and it was premiered at a hall in Woodstock. And one of the interesting things about that hall was that it was open in the back to the outside. And so while this piece is 3 movements of silence, and John Cage encourages the performer, there's a little asterisk next to the title that reads, however long you're going to perform this piece, that's the title of this piece. So, for example, tonight we are going to do a 1 minute and 33 seconds by John Cage, but I would like for you to join me in this and allow yourself to experience the sounds that are coming to you. Imagine what that would have been like to hear that open air space at Woodstock at that time, and where you are right now. And imagine being in a space together where we are all watching this, or we're all experiencing this from where we are in this year 2021. And so I just encourage you to take this moment together to experience whatever sounds you're hearing and let your attention make it musical. So I'm going to remove my headphones as part of this, but this is our John Cage 1 minute and 33 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is, again, it's not the first time I've experienced it. And I'm curious for you, Megan, how does this type of performance translate to spiritual practice for you?
That is such a beautiful question, and I really love that that's the focus of this series, is the connection to that.
Because
And
we don't often have opportunity to explore that within the context of classical music in terms of
right,
training. Mhm.
right. Well, and so many of us, especially vocalists in classical music, we have employment situations that are in liturgical settings or in
Yes.
religious settings. And it's very interesting to experience your profession and your art and your spirituality in the same place. And so I've had many many days and times in which I've gotten to ponder my feelings about whatever I've been uh, you know employed to sing or something like that at the time. But then what are those that are for you? Where are you showing up that it's for someone else? I find that our ability to connect with that personally, but then also provide that moment, that musical moment in a spiritual setting, can be deeply powerful. And especially knowing what it means to show up and provide that moment, that slowing down to really listen to music, especially in a spiritual setting, I think brings us together. I do want to just touch on for just a moment, if you'll let me, this idea of the fact that we haven't been able to gather in performance halls for quite a while. And I think that a lot of us maybe have had that experience, maybe not being able to gather in a religious setting or a spiritual space that they have been accustomed to, and we haven't been able to gather in performance halls. But I think that one of the things that's been on my heart during this time is how special and powerful it is to show up in a space where you're allowing the music to come over you and you're choosing to engage with it. And you are sitting with a bunch of people you may or may not know, that you've chosen at that moment to be in that room with community and saying, I'm having a personal experience here, but I'm also having a community experience. And we're gathering because these sounds brought us together, or these intentions brought us together. And so your question about the spiritual practice of that is manifold for me, I think, and shows up in many places. Someone who grew up in a religious family too, and has that side as a spiritual side of myself, that I experience it there, but I definitely feel that alignment of gathering with intention, allowing moments for peace and introspection, but also for intention, for transcendence in many places. And I think music helps us in so many ways come to that moment.
And even in the silence too, right?
Oh, 100%.
So thank you, Megan. And I think this is a perfect transition to our next segment. And so Stuart, and Kevin.
So our final guests this evening are members of the Live Oak Friends meeting here in Houston in the Heights. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you could join us this evening. It's a really honor. So I'll turn it over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Stuart. With me tonight are Nell Warrens, Bridget Lois Jensen, and Lynn Lane. And we call this silent worship expectant waiting on God. In this worship, we expect to experience direct communion with God, the divine spirit, or whatever name one uses for that transcendent essence that infuses all life. We ask that during this worship, like Megan did in the last piece, that everyone at home and watching join with us in this experience and put down any distractions you might have. And we invite others backstage to join us in the worship. A fundamental Quaker belief is that there is that of God in everyone. We seek to interact with others from that perspective and to live our lives according to Quaker testimonies of integrity, equality, simplicity, and peace. Within silent worship, we are actively listening for that inspiration from God. Sometimes one might rise to share a message. They believe they've received such a message. Our task is to be open to the leading of Spirit and leave the outcome to Spirit. You'll know we're concluding this worship when I say thank you. Let us begin. Thank you, friends.
Thank you so much, Kevin and friends, for being here this evening and leading that expectant listening. And a sincere thanks to all of our guests for joining us in that experience. Something really, really profound about this ingredient of silence and the way we just experienced it as well. I was thinking about volume, and the phrase is a little, a little bit of noise. It was like a little bit of sound. There was a little bit of sound. And silence is more absolute. Like when we use it in everyday language, it's like silence has that like absolute connotation to it. But this evening, and especially now, I was experiencing silence as also something that has volume, and it can be a little bit of silence or a lot of silence. It's not so absolute. And that recognition is a real gift, and I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of experience that this evening. So thank you. All of those who have joined us this evening from across traditions have been so invaluable, your contributions, as we wrap the series up. And I think it's a perfect glaze on which to ice this cake, and I really really appreciate it. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Stuart. Thank Houston Grand Opera and ISH.
So now we'll transition to kind of a wrap up of the series, right, Carlene?
Hey, Sai. So,
Hey, Sai.
Hey.
Yeah, and have a moment here because also it's important, I think, to include people who are what we would call sometimes on the stage or in the theater or behind the scenes, but they are by no means behind the scenes. In fact, they are the foundation of what we do. They are the scene, because if they aren't there, it doesn't happen. So we're just so grateful to Emily Wells, who is Senior Producing Manager of HGO Co., to Andy Horton, who is HGO Co.'s Community Initiatives Coordinator, and the incredible technical support behind this that we required her to learn how to do this year. So she, you give someone a challenge and they rise to it. And then, of course, Cyrus Whirls. And Cyrus, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly your title at ISH.
Director of Programs.
Yes, thank you.
And Jack of a few trades.
And Jack of many traits, I'm sure. And so thank you for, again, your connections and your input into the programming of this series, because it does take a village, I think, to put on a 5-part series on music in spiritual traditions and practice. And so I would love to know, Sai, if you could, is there something that from the series that stands out to you, something that comes to mind that you either was unexpected for you or just stands out to you?
Well, a few things. I think for me personally, the comments of Jeremy Johnson from HGO and then Dr. Anthony Pinn really struck on a certain essential quality of music that actually brought me back to even an idea of spirituality. So I was sort of had a really rational view of the world in college, and music was kind of my foray back into an understanding of what spirituality would mean. And I think it's this quality of music of connecting us in some kind of direct way with the mystery of what is. And Jeremy touched on that when I can't remember his exact words, but he talked about harmony. And he talked about just the multiple levels of what harmony might mean in the vibrations that are in our bodies, in the world, and how they fit together. And then Dr. Pin talking about spirituality as our effort to express the inexpressible. And, you know, so often we get caught feeling like words don't quite do something justice. And I feel like when it comes to the true essence of things, maybe music does a better job at connecting us with that essence. So, but also just the breadth and diversity of what music is and what it can evoke, I think really stood to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Andy, I'm going to go to you because Andy is also, she's a trained classical singer. And I'm curious for you as a musician, practicing musician, what stood out for you in this series? Because you were really in the nitty gritty. So I'm curious what came to the surface, perhaps unexpectedly for you.
Sure. As Carlene said, I come from a very musical background. Everybody in my family, except for me, is a choir director. And I have 2 degrees in vocal performance. So that is a lot of who I am. And then for this series, I acted as the communication and also tech hub for everybody. And so I feel like I really got to speak with everybody one-on-one. And I just keep coming back to something that Deborah said in our episode on lyrics, which is that she was specifically talking about Bun B, who's gangster rap, and Deborah, who's doing spoken word and opera, and then Cantor Rollin Simmons, who's Jewish liturgical cantor, and just how they had this common space where they were seen as equal. And I think that's been really important, just as for my musical ears as well, to see the different ways that things are performed, as Megan was talking about tonight, the different vocal qualities that are used. You know, the singing that Samani Punya Pragya did today in that meditation, that was her singing. It was so clear and so kind of, it had an edge to it that was really nice, that really added to that clarity. And then Cantor Simmons it was more like musical theater. It was a different kind of sound than you know, even the Arvo Pärt, which like created space in that sound. So just like the different sounds that were just present throughout, but they can all be equal and they can all be used in different ways.
Yeah, there's a real again, I think that I love that you brought that up, Andy, because it for me, this also took out, it recognizes all forms of music as spiritual and all practices as meaningful, and that is, I think, you know, something that is a very important thing to notice. So thank you. And Emily.
Wow, there has been so much amazing content to unpack over the course of this series. I have loved music my entire life, and in my spiritual practice, it plays a huge role. But I think for me, music as a whole is a spiritual experience. Cyrus, you reminded me of Jeremy talking about a harmonic chord that hits you just right, and you could just sit in it for a really long time, and just let that sound wash over you and wash over your brain and your mind and your heart and your spirit all the way through the duration of that chord. And I love that music can play with rhythm and tempo of that harmonic and add in a particular phrase that just transports you to some other space in your well-being, in your brain, in your spirit. And then tonight, Megan talking about letting your attention make the sounds around you music. And that's how I feel when I'm out in nature, which is my happy place. And just letting the sounds of the world around you, whether it's the wind in the trees or the crunch of your feet on the ground, just all of that environment around you, enveloping you and creating its own special kind of earth music. So I just took so much out of this series, and grateful to have shared the space with the two of you, Stuart and Cyrus, and then of course my colleagues Andy and Carlene. And another mad shout out for Andy. They have been instrumental behind the scenes, and we've had a few technical challenges on this series, so I cannot thank you enough, Andy.
Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, and Stuart, what for you? What's your takeaway from this?
There's so many. I've been like prepping because I knew you were going to ask me, and I don't have an I don't have an elegant answer. I think what I'm feeling though is it's similar to Andy's reflection in that there's this kind of a debate around how much of experience and in religious studies, how much of religious experience is essential to being either human or a sentient being or some arrangement of physical matter. Like, is there something common? Is there something that can be said across time and space and traditions about something similar? And people argue a lot about that. Is there something that we all tap into, or kind of that we flirt with one thing, or is it a very different experience for all of us that can't really even be compared? And I think that this series was, in many ways, it was a reflection of that. There was so much that felt whole about the performances we saw and the insights that we heard. And there was a lot of head nodding going on, and there was a lot of shared feeling around the things that we experienced. But there was also, I think, a reverence for me around peering into worlds that I'm not part of, and that it's okay not to be part of, and kind of a respect and a celebration kind of that diversity. That doesn't need a kumbaya moment to make it legitimate or worthwhile.
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
So that's this kind of attention that I think I'm going to sit with for a while, is that that line between togetherness and distinctiveness. And it's a cool wave to be riding.
No, it really is. And it's been a wonderful, meaningful journey. And again, we value our community partners, and especially the Institute for Spirituality and Health at Texas Medical Center, because the work, I think, is so important. And we hope that it serves our community as much as it serves each of us individually. So we're very grateful.
Thanks,
we'll
Carlene.
miss our Friday morning check-ins for the next episode, and but we'll have this series to look back on with great fondness. And I know I'll be reviewing a lot of the episodes just to kind of go back and remember there's a lot to unpack. So we hope that everyone will take the time and go back, and if you haven't watched all of the episodes, they're each very unique and very inspired, and we know you won't be disappointed. So,
and it's easy to
and
do that.
if
you can do that on our Facebook pages, on our YouTube channel. So you can go on our websites, which Carlene
are both the spirituality and health.org and hgoco.org.
That's right. Lots of love to all of you. Thank you so much. The institutional friendship between ISH and HGO is rippled through our personal friendships here, and I'm just happy to be part of all of it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Peace to all. Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.